Welcome to Power Up, the podcast that uncovers the unique challenges women leaders face today. Join your hosts, Nat and Kristen, as we dive into the tough topics and provide actionable insights you can apply right now. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss any episodes.
Women who naturally discuss their professional lives in casual settings are 2.5 times more likely to receive unsolicited career opportunities.
What about those who unnaturally discuss their professional life?
We're actually going to talk about natural and unnatural conversation today.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I should look at our notes.
This is, if you could draw a Venn diagram on the board today, we've got small talk in one circle and we have networking in the other circle. And that little sliver of overlap is called stealth networking, which is turning small talk into career connections.
I love it.
Yes.
I love it. I'm going to learn a lot today. And I feel like this is particularly timely. I had an event last week where I was sitting with a bunch of people who I had very little in common with. So it's quite interesting when you've had that experience recently to be thinking about small talk and how it fits and dragging out connection.
Did you not make any career enhancing connections?
I don't think so. I got 2 LinkedIn connections straight after with no note. And then I wrote a really nice note back and I don't think I've heard anything. Was like, this is such a that is unnatural networking.
Yeah.
I just found that really ugh. That's what people don't like. I think.
Well, we're not all going to have wins, but there is a real power in micro networking moments. And we've been chatting about this a lot lately. How do we turn the superpower that us as women have, this relational connection and ability to talk about, well, frankly, anything, anywhere, any time of the day, more into work and career conversation, this concept of micro networking?
Yeah. And in this, we say it's a superpower women have because we tend to have had generations of socializing around those informal connections while we've done the history. Do you remember the History of Networking podcast episode? Yeah. Which one?
No, the number. Gosh, no.
Okay. Whereas men have been more socialized to do more transactional networking and building trust. And I actually, for the newsletter this week, was looking up, that phenomenon when you go on dates, you probably haven't done this in a few years.
If I were yes, my husband would be like, hang on a second.
But a lot of women I know, and I've experienced this too, where you don't get asked any questions. If you're dating a man, it's quite a common thing of you feel like you're peppering them with questions and you're getting nothing back. And I was looking into it today because it was sort of vaguely related to what we're talking about. And apparently it's an oblivious thing. It's just a total, you're nervous maybe, and you don't know that you have to engage in the conversation and build that connection. It's not something that a lot of men have been taught. Maybe not a lot. # not all men, but that is what leads to it because it's a phenomenon. There's a lot of articles about it because women get so enraged because they're like, I'm in this conversation that is one-sided and I have left and I know everything about this person and I'm not even sure if they know my name.
They know nothing.
Yeah.
Sorry, they're not socialized to respond in kind.
Well, just to ask questions. And when you're nervous, we tend to fall back on things that we feel comfortable with. And so if you know a bunch of stuff about a topic, the easiest solution is when someone's asking you about it to just answer. And so a lot of the articles, and I think they've done some tests and trials, and they have found that most of the time they are actually unaware that they haven't asked a question and that that's expected.
Yeah.
Because it's just not, you know.
Mothers and fathers, teach your children.
Yeah. Well, you think it's something you'd learn at kindy, but it's just I think when you're in a stress situation, you fall back on what you feel comfortable with.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I suppose it's a little bit of reciprocity, isn't it? It's making sure you're being curious about the other person. But so in terms of how, Nat, do you naturally pivot away from small talk to kind of more meaningful / career talk, be it intentionally or unintentionally?
I was actually, I've clearly been writing the newsletter today. I gave an example of how if you'd asked you or me the same question, you'd end up in 2 different places. So I'm going to throw out the question and you tell me where you'd go.
Okay.
Because I took a guess.
Okay.
So the question is, did you see that rugby game in the weekend? Where would you go?
Well, I would go to the rugby game and then I would probably jump to all the other sports that were on the weekend and we'd talk about the sports. And then I would probably Well, I would get around to work eventually. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I had you go sports.
Yes.
And then I was like, you could go to parent politics on the sidelines. And then you could also pivot to universities in the US and scholarships, or you could go travel in Germany with your son maybe going there. I was like, that would be a path I would see you go down that would lead to, at any one of those points, there's a clear exit to work, because, you know, you start talking about parent politics, then you go into, oh, it's really hard because I always want to talk about work and blah, blah, blah.
This is good. I probably did that on the weekend. I was at a party
style.
on the weekend, and I think that tracks.
And then I said,
It was
if
cricket, football, and then it was, yes, Germany and football scholarships. And then it was actually got chatting about this other person who knew had another child and scholarships. I don't know if we got to work, because then I directly was like, oh, are you still with blah, blah, blah?
Oh, sports place or
Yeah, like we
relationship?
broke the ice with the sports talk.
Yeah.
And then I was able to just directly go, hey, are you still with this company?
Yeah. Which actually, it doesn't have to be a, what is it called? Where you jump,
Natural
make
pivot?
a segue.
Segue.
I said I would go rugby. I would go straight to some sort of sports documentaries or podcast.
Yes.
And then that would lead to either the disruption of the media industry or podcast payments or into something along those lines.
Great. Yeah, no, it's great. It's true. We'd take different pivots, which is great. But it is interesting how, and again, I think politicians are fabulous at doing this thing. You get asked a question or a comment happens and you pivot it to where you want to go. And you can quickly do that quite naturally. And an example that I was reading online was you could be on the sidelines of swimming lessons, for example, and a parent might go, oh my gosh, the crazy busy time of the season or the juggle or the whatever, and just like running to get groceries or running to do this, that, the other thing. And then instead of going down that rabbit hole, because that's an invitation to go down that small talk rabbit hole. Oh, I know, I am so busy too. And I've got these 3 things and we're all over the place and work is outrageous and project deadlines, not useful career chat. I think you have to acknowledge the other person's feelings by going, I get what you're going through, by going, it is a crazy time of year, isn't it? And then natural pivot. Do you know what really worked for me this year? Going 3 days at home, 2 days in the office. We moved all of our meetings to remote. So now you've gone to something about what's worked for you at work as it relates to the busy juggle. Then you go, what have you found works for you? Are you hybrid?
Yeah.
So then you go bounce it back to the person, and you've redirected from overwhelm, crazy talk to what's working for you.
I love it, because I think one of the things, and did you mention at the start that we're calling this stealth networking? Did you mention that? Okay,
it's the Venn diagram.
It's the Venn diagram. Sorry. I was distracted by the Venn diagram. Because I think there's 2 things that I've been thinking about recently. One is that my goal for next year, and the way I articulated it this morning was taking joy in the everyday things. But I think part of that is avoiding the race to the bottom, which is something that is an absolute pet peeve for me at the moment. Like, I just don't know why. I mean, I know how it works. I know it's our brains, but I just don't want to be in any more conversations where, quite rightly, things go wrong. And it's lovely to be able to vent, but let someone have their vent and, like you say, pivot. You don't have to jump on the vent. And I tend to find in groups these days, if someone comes in with something, they've had a tough day, everyone piles on with theirs, and it's so counterproductive.
Yes. And I love that recipe that with this example is going, I acknowledge what you've said and I experience it as well. Do you know what I found really works this year? So you're jumping more to expansionary, optimistic thinking, and then you're in a new, more positive place. You've come above the line, I suppose. Good way to say it. And then you're bouncing it back to them from above the line territory.
I love it. And I had the same thing at this event the other night where we were talking about the crazy year, and I jumped forward to, how do you think 2025 is going to go? Because the themes I'm seeing are X, Y, and Z. And so it's sort of similar thing of you're moving out of the tropes, which feel like tropes at this point, into, oh, what I've noticed is this, or my theory is this, or I've heard X, Y, or Z. And everyone feels validated because you have jumped on that. But I also think that's the point of stealth networking, right? Is you are not aiming to stay in those rabbit holes. I liked how you said that.
Yeah.
You are aiming to jump around until you land on something that is actually interesting to both of you, which won't be the first 3, 4, even 5
Well,
topics.
no, because just how I bounced back to you with that hybrid work,
Great
it's not really that
bouncing.
interesting to chat hybrid work, is it? But what it lends to is going, oh, when I have a project on, I might go in the office, and then you go, oh, what kind of projects? Or, you may be able to uncover things about that person's work, which then ultimately, like you said, you land on. How do we answer, what do you do?
Oh, what do you do?
Yeah.
Well, you can have a couple of answers depending on how obnoxious you want to be.
Yeah.
Sometimes when people ask, what do I do? Actually, do you know what? I'm going to pivot here because this is a great example of small talk. I saw an article the other day about a couple of tech founders who have got financial freedom and have retired really early, and they dread this question because they say there's so much stigma around what you do, and they're like, it is very difficult to answer, I don't work. And so they are doing a whole series of articles on what we expect with that question. So putting that down, because I think that is a loaded question.
Yeah.
One answer is to just go straight to a hobby or something, to be like, oh, well, this weekend I was doing DIY or rah. Or from a work perspective, it is the start of your elevator pitch. Like, I am a problem solver, or I am this. Or if you are really struggling, stick with your job. But reading up on this topic a lot and thinking about our experience, it is ideal if you are feeling comfortable to avoid the easiest answer and go to the most interesting answer that is going to spark the next thing. So just saying your job may not do that.
Yeah, you had a couple strategies there. The first was the politician strategy, which you did not answer the question, and you inserted something you wanted to talk about, which was what's keeping you busy right now.
Yeah.
Right? You're like,
what do you do doesn't necessarily mean work. Right?
Yeah, that's so well. And in fact, we've always suggested what's keeping you busy is a better way to start, because then you could go, oh my gosh, I'm doing this whole backyard renovation right now, these kind of things. But that was the first strategy that you gave. And the second strategy was, I love the first line of the elevator pitch. And I love that as a start. It doesn't mean you need to double down on it like a networking elevator pitch. You could go, I'm a problem solver, I'm a journalist, I'm a project manager. It could be a title, could be a role. But then I love responding with a statement of what's keeping you busy these days. I'm a problem solver and I'm really fascinated by this right now. Could be AI. Not doubling down on the job itself and trying to make it feel important, because it's an intimidating question, but rather going, this trend is really fascinating right now. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that, because I think it is, when you think about small talk, it is a two-way relationship, and you are both on a mission to find commonalities that are interesting. And that's all it is. That's all small talk is. Like, no one's in it for the actual small talk. They're in it to get to a destination.
Yeah.
So if you are on the asking side and kickstarting the conversation, ask open questions. And you'll notice that what do you do isn't an open question, which is why it can be tricky.
Yes.
Because if you're talking to someone who might be a bit shy, they might answer with, I'm an XYZ. You finish the conversation there. There's nothing to move on. So that's what I like about what keeps you busy these days, is it's much more open-ended.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, if someone does ask you a closed question, don't keep it to the word. Like, you are the other half of this relationship. So how do you take what you do? And I love what you did there, and say, I'm a problem solver and this is what I'm thinking about at the moment. Do a yes and, because between the two of you, share the load, because you're both trying to find something interesting to get together on.
Yeah. Another really tool is going, I've noticed this, and then bouncing it back to them. Have you noticed this? I know this sounds so weird, but I actually had this conversation this morning. I've noticed the algorithms on LinkedIn have really changed, so I'm not getting any updates from people like yourself doing really cool things. Have you noticed that? I know that's obscure, but it's like me.
Kristen, go to my LinkedIn page and make sure you get my updates. Thank
like
you.
Something.
Inexcusable.
Yeah, but I've noticed
Engage with my content.
You get what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You've noticed this? Or I've noticed every person in a meeting these days has a different AI note-taking tool. Which one are you using? Are you using any? All of those things. And I really like going back to the stealth networking thing. And I love the focus on careers, because we've said it before that it's so easy. And this is like probably a 201, a 301 if we were at the University of Networking. Level 1 is just getting out there and doing it. And if you want to talk about family, children, hobbies, whatever, go wild. Like, great, master that. But if you can get to the point that you're curating these career enhancing relationships, it actually does mean stepping up your networking tactics a bit and stealthing in the things that will get you that work connection. That's effectively what we're saying today, is you can just do the basics if you want. And if you're feeling comfortable in that, great. But how do you sneak in some of those work things that firstly showcase who you are, but secondly create something that might lead to opportunities or knowledge sharing?
Yeah, I met someone at the dog park that ultimately led us to have a great male ally interview, which ultimately has led us into a potential customer, a large bank here in New Zealand.
Yeah.
But I think you do have to take that natural shift away from your dogs and away from your kids and away from the barbecue or whatever you're chatting about, and just shift it slightly to, is there something you're really proud of this year that you've done at work? Or did you have any career curveballs thrown your way?
Yeah, I agree. And it doesn't have to be your opening line, because like we all know, and I've actually had someone do this to me on LinkedIn recently. It's probably the third attempt where they've come to me without offering any information about themselves or any bid or any reciprocity, and asked for connections. They've asked for intros. They've asked for mentors. And I'm like, I don't know anything about you. Like, this is too quick, too much, too quick.
That's not very stealth.
No, it's not. So if you start, and like I know my sister's been in the same boat, running club, ended up connecting with someone who's very senior in her organization, having great chats. Like, you don't have to start with just talking about work, but you want to aim to get there.
Yes.
And that's the stealth part.
Yes.
And I think one of the things that has occurred to me thinking about this topic over the last week is context cues. So like at this event the other night, because I kind of both of us do, keep an eye on things like AI, major themes in work, like current events. Even in this case, I was talking to someone who was a consultant in one of the big consulting firms. I had a bunch of stuff in my back pocket that I was already interested in that I could raise. So I term this as almost doing your research. But the more you know about current events or people, if you know you're going to bump into someone, find out a bit about them so that you can have a much higher likelihood of having those bids and saying something like, oh, I heard you were on this, or I saw on LinkedIn you did this. Having those things, immediate shortcut. You don't always get them, but you know, not everyone is going to be a good connection for you. And you can waste a lot of time. And I got to this point very quickly with dating as well. If I'm the one doing the legwork on the conversation, this is not someone who's interested in me.
Nah.
This is therefore not someone who's going to ever think about me when opportunities arise. And that's okay. But like, don't waste my time on them either. Like, just exit gracefully and go find someone who is more likely to connect.
Agreed. Don't beleaguer the person. I was going to say point, but the person.
Yeah. Because like I felt like at this event the other night, and I was like desperately eyeing up this other group, being like, I wish I was over there, because they were interested in me and we had common things. And even though one of them I'd never met before, within 2 seconds of sitting down, we were laughing and chatting. And when you go into different groups, you're like, oh, I'm trying so hard. And maybe I'm going too far here, but like I've been in situations recently where someone couldn't even look me in the eye. Like they were just looking at the other men. And I was just like, this is not good for me. Like I don't feel good in this situation.
No,
and
noted.
Yeah. So stealth your way out.
Exactly. And
Get out of the Venn diagram.
Not everyone we meet is going to be a career connection, but they are powerful when we make them. And I just wanted to finish off with the follow through is where we get to close the loop with that connection. Follow up on LinkedIn. Find them on LinkedIn. Connect. Write a short note. It was really great meeting at the Blah-de-Blah event last night. Be great to stay in touch. And then if you had a good conversation about something and you see an article in a couple weeks or you've noticed something, you see a report, go ahead and send it to them. Hey, I was just thinking about the last chat. You might find this useful. You've probably seen it, but take a look. Let me know what you think. So it's that reciprocity and just gently staying in touch, but do the follow through.
Yeah, I'm a stinge, so I don't pay for LinkedIn. So what I do is if I connect with someone and don't write a note, but I've just met them, like my assumption is they've connected that dot, I make a note. So that as soon as they accept it, I will send a little message to them.
Well, you'll have up to a certain amount of credits.
You only get like 5.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people you're connecting
how many
with,
people
but I
are
get
you
through them in
meeting,
a
Natalie?
day. But yeah, I feel like this topic, especially at this time of year, stealth your way in, get to that 201 level, try and get some of that career enhancing stuff. I'm speaking to so many power suitors at the moment, and their number one priority is to surround themselves with career enhancing connections.
Yeah.
It is top priority, even at executive levels. We are not getting that connection in the way that is helping our careers. So we be the change we want to see and start trying to build those conversations into networking events.
Have your what do you do response ready in your back pocket.
Oh, I like that action.
Yeah. Just have it ready.
Have a couple.
Yeah. Have a couple, depending on the situation. And I've got a quote. Okay, well, this one is Seneca. And Seneca was a Stoic philosopher. And I actually heard the rise of Stoicism as a small talk segue. And stealth networking segue is Stoicism. That's really big. People are even listening to podcasts called Stoicism.
Is that to get more resilience? Is that what we're doing?
I don't know, but I think it's great. It's another podcast topic. But anyway,
be less vulnerable. I don't know.
Seneca is at the heart of the Stoic movement.
Okay, well, let's hope this isn't controversial.
No, he says, luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity.
So true.
Yeah.
Well, go prepare. I love those opening lines in your back pocket. Don't worry about starting with one. You don't have to dive straight in. Start with something that creates some sort of banter back and forward. Find those opportunities. Look engaged. Go with the process and
Follow
then
through.
stealth away if you're getting nowhere. It's okay. There's plenty more people in the ocean.
Take care, everyone. We'll chat soon.
Bye.